wine, milk, and honey. Didn't mention honey last time, honey too. Then you're supposed to wash your hands without a bracha. You wash the sim, you wash the bread. There is a lenient opinion, that's why a lot of people don't do it. So, but that's really the proper thing to do.
Pickles.
Huh?
Pickles.
Because it's wet from water. It's in the jar of pickle, so it's wet. Yeah. Water, vinegar, whatever it is. Yeah. If it's a mixture, you go by the majority. So that's why you wash your hands. We already discussed if you by mistake said a bracha. We're not going to go into it unless there's a specific request to review that part. You want to make sure you don't say a bracha. After chatz goes karpas. Karpas. Karpas is that we dip the onion in salt water, and we should make sure we eat less than a kazayis. Kazayis the size of an olive. So you want to eat a very small amount of onion, not too much, because if you eat too much, then anyone remembers last year? We haven't eat too much. It becomes questionable if you have to say an after bracha. It becomes questionable. You don't want to be in a situation where it's questionable that you say after bracha. So that's why you want to eat less than a kazayis, small amount. When you say hadama, you have in mind also the maror, the bitter herbs you're going to eat during the meal. We're going to eat maror during the meal, bitter herbs. Usually when you eat vegetables in the meal, you don't say a bracha on it, part of the meal. But the maror, the bitter herbs, is not really part of a regular meal. It's not like the food they eat during the meal, it's eating it for the mitzvah of having maror on Pesach. So therefore, it is questionable whether you should say hadama on the maror they're eating during the meal. So when you're eating maror during the meal, after the matzah, we're going to get to it, we don't say hadama because it's questionable. When you say hadama now on the onion and salt water, you can have in mind with hadama that this bracha hadama is not only for the onion, it's also for the maror they can have during the meal. The Rebbe writes in Agad that also have in mind the maror that you can have in the sandwich too. Because you can have maror inside the sandwich. Maror and matzah together. So the hadama should be for the maror, and also for the maror inside the sandwich. If you didn't have it in mind, don't worry about it. Just everything's still safe, nothing changes. So you should have it in mind. Now, after now some like to use a potato. They said it's better onion. When some like a lot of kids don't like onions, so give them a potato. If you're going to use a potato, you have to be more careful. You don't need a kazais, right? Because potato tastes better than onion. So chances are you might end up eating the amount to say an after bracha. So you want to be careful, especially when using the potato, just to take a small amount. After karpas goes yachal. Now, even though I'm going through the God, I'm not going through every single detail because we don't have the Goddess in front of us, going through the basics. So, yachas is that you break the middle matzah. They have 3 matzahs. Those who have 3 matzahs, not everyone has 3 matzahs. Some have their own 3 matzahs. And in most houses, if about the girls don't have their own 3 matzahs. I grew up thinking that everyone does, because I grew up that way, that the sisters had their own 3 matzahs from Bas Mitzvah. So somehow, many years had in mind, oh, that's for God. And I learned from teaching that it's not like that. So, but I think in Machmiyad, you do have your own 3 matzahs, right? So if you have your own 3 matzahs, you're going to break the middle matzah. Why do we break the middle matzah? Because you're supposed to, the matzah that you do the mitzvah with on the night of Pesach, the Torah calls it lechem oini, poor bread. Because it's called poor bread, that also tells us that the matzah should be a broken matzah. Because a poor person can't afford to buy a whole loaf of bread, a whole matzah. You can only afford to buy a piece. So that's why the matzah should be broken. The matzah that we use to perform the mitzvah of eating matzahs on the night of Pesach should be a broken piece. That's why we break it. Now, We're not eating it, the matzah. Why are we bringing it? Because when we say the Haggadah has to be said over the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs that we do on the night of Pesach is supposed to be in front of us when we say the Haggadah. It says in the Torah that you should tell your children about everything that happened in Mitzrayim, which took us out of Mitzrayim, all the miracles. So it says you should tell your child on that day, because of this, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Because of this, Hashem took us out, so we should do the mitzvahs. So you're telling your child, because of this. In other words, the mitzvahs are on the table. The mitzvahs are here on the table, and you're telling the child, because of Hashem wanted us to do these mitzvahs, that's why Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. So that's why when we are saying the Haggadah, we should have the mitzvahs in front of it, the matzah and the maror. Times Mishnah was the current Pesach. So that's why the matzah they're going to do the mitzvah with, and we do the mitzvah with a broken matzah, should be on the table at the time he's saying the Haggadah. So before we start saying the Haggadah, we break the matzah, so there should be a broken matzah. So we break the middle matzah, and when we break the middle matzah, we break it in such a way that one matzah is larger than the other. The larger piece is going to be for the afikoman, and the smaller piece is going to be for meitzi matzah. When we do the mitzvah of matzah in Torah, at the beginning of right after we wash, we use the smaller piece, and the larger piece is for the afikoman. And after we break it in half, and one is larger than the other, we take the larger piece and we break it into 5 parts. The custom is we break it while it's still under the covers, break it into 5 pieces, and you wrap it up, and someone people have pillows, to put it between the pillows, you have other places to hide it, you put it away somewhere. You want to make sure it's not eaten during the Seder, during the meal. The story to Rabbi Osdoba that once you broke into 6 pieces and you put 1 piece on the side, so 5 is very specific. We're not going into the whole explanation. And then goes Magid. After Yaakov goes Magid, Haggadah, the 4 questions that the child had. You want to say no Haggadah. I'm not going into all the details, just the basic parts of the Haggadah. You have to know what to do. Middle of the Haggadah, when we say the Yishamda, you pick up the cup of wine, and you say the Yishamda, people say the Yishamda. The reason why we pick up the cup of wine is because when we praise Hashem, we do it over a cup of wine. But now when we pick up the cup of wine, we also cover the matzah. So in general, the matzah is uncovered during the entire Seder, because you have to have the broken matzah in front of you. So we uncover the matzahs. Not only the broken matzah is uncovered, it's mainly the broken matzah, but you can also uncover the other matzahs too. I believe it's mainly the broken one. Now, when you say Visham, you pick up the kais, but you cover the matzah first. That's like when you say Kiddush. When you say Kiddush, you cover the matzah, you cover the column. Why do you cover the column when you say Kiddush? Because Hamoitzi takes precedence over Agafen. Let's say if you're about to wash and you want to drink wine, what comes first? Agafen Hamoitzi. Hamoitzi comes first. So by Kiddush, really Hamoitzi comes first. But we have the choice to say Kiddush first. So it's an embarrassment to the bread because Hamoitzi is supposed to come first. And we cover the column. The night of Pesach, the same thing. The matzah is the main part over here, because as we said before, we're supposed to say that God over the matzah. You tell the child, because of this, because of the mitzvah of eating matzah maror, so you're supposed to have the matzah in front of you, uncovered, when you're saying Haggadah. So matzah, so just like when it comes to the bracha, Hamoitzi comes before Haggadah. So to here, the night of Pesach, the matzah is supposed to be uncovered in front of you when you say Haggadah. Now you're picking up the kais, the wine. What's embarrassment in the matzah? because the matzah is so to say the main player here, just like when it comes to kiddush, matzah, challah, hamoitzi takes precedence over nothing. So too, matzah, the night of Pesach, takes precedence over the wine, because that's the matzah supposed to be in front of you. So when you pick up the case to pick up the case, because you're praising Hashem, Yishamda, so you pick up the case. So now you cover the matzah first, and then you pick up the case. And then after you put down the case, you uncover the matzah again. Now we go to, then comes the second cup, then the whole Agada, the same Agada. There's other parts in the Seder that we're not going through everything. Then you finish the Agada and part of Havel, and you say Agafin, and you drink the second cup. As we said, the men are reclining, the women are not reclining. Then comes Meitzi Matzah. So Meitzi Matzah, we have 3 matzahs. So how do you do it? You say Hameitzi while you're holding on to the top and bottom matzah. Just like every Shabbos and Yom Tov, you say you do like a Mishnah, which means you have 2 whole chavos. So too on the night of Pesach, you have 2 whole matzahs. There's an opinion actually that says you only need a matzah and a half. You don't need 2 whole matzahs. It's a machlokes. One opinion says you have to have 2 whole matzahs, just like Shabbos. In Yom Tov, you have 2 chavos. You like a Mishnah, 2 chavos together, and at Pesach, 2 matzahs. That's why we have 3 matzahs, because one is broken. You have 2 whole matzahs and a broken matzah. So when you say Amitzi, you hold on to the top of the bottom matzah. And you say Amitzi. And then you let go of the bottom matzah, and now you're going to hold on to the top matzah and the broken matzah, the middle matzah. Because now you're going to say the bracha Asher Kiddishanu v'Mitzvayse v'Tzilanu Am Achilas Matzah. It's a mitzatit matzah. So say a bracha Asher Kiddishanu v'Mitzvayse v'Tzilanu Am Achilas Matzah. They're holding on now to the top and the broken. The broken because the mitzvahs with the broken. Why the top? There is an opinion that says you do the mitzvah at the top. There is an opinion of that. So even though you say explain many point bread broken, but there is an opinion that says it's really the whole one because you break it first anyways. You are eating a broken one, so you're still doing the broke, yeah. So one opinion says that the mitzvah has to be done with the top matzah, with the whole. In other words, you can use the whole matzah to the mitzvah with. One says no, use the broken one that was broken till now. So we say a bracha on both. We say a bracha on the top and the broken. While we're holding it together, we say the bracha Asher Kiddishanu v'Mitzvayse Am Achilas Matzah. So far, is it clear what we're saying? Now, when you say the bracha Am Achilas Matzah, you have in mind also for the other matzah. You eat matzah again later. It's a mitzvah to eat a sandwich, matzah mar. It's a mitzvah to eat afikomen. That's also a mitzvah. But you say a bracha again, like you say I ate something, apple, you have an orange, the same bracha. So the same bracha Am Achilas Matzah is going to be for the matzah you can eat later also. And you say a bracha again. So when you say Am Achilas Matzah, you have in mind, you should have in mind, because these are other mitzvahs within the mitzvah of matzah. The mitzvah of matzah mara, as we explained, afikomen. So when you say Am Achilas Matzah, you have in mind that the bracha should also be for the sandwich and also for the afikomen that you can have at the end of the meal matzah. If you did not have it in mind, don't worry, just continue, you're still fine. You should have it in mind. After matzah goes mar, the bitter herbs. You can either use horseradish or romaine lettuce. You can use either one. That's halacha. Mini Chabad is we use both. Each one has an advantage over each other, as we explained already. So many Chabad is to use both. Use horseradish and romaine lettuce together, and we dip it into the charesis. Charesis is the paste of apples, nuts, and wine, and then you shake it off. The charesis symbolizes the cement that the Yidden worked with in Mitzrayim. The charesis, you shake it off. When you say the bracha, shake the shanu, b'mitzvaysa, b'tzivanu, al achilas mar, and you have in mind not only for this mitzvah, but also for the mitzvah of having the sandwich of matzah and mar together, which comes right afterwards. Let's go back to the matzah. When you're eating the matzah, I didn't finish. Yeah, let's discuss the details. How much? Okay, so with the matzah, we say al mechilas matzah, you're holding the top and the broken one. Afterwards, after you say the bracha, you break off a kazayis from the top, a kazayis from the broken. We'll discuss later how much is a kazayis. But for now, a kazayis from the top, a kazayis from the broken piece, and you eat it together like a sandwich. There's nothing in between, and you're supposed to put it in your mouth at the same time. And you're supposed to eat it as fast as possible, because you have to eat it within about 4 minutes, sometimes 6 minutes. So you try to eat it quickly. It's not like, take your time, eat it fast. You don't have to rush, because it's not such a large amount of malta, we'll discuss, but it has to eat within a certain amount of time. The maror too has to eat within a certain amount of time. It's much easier with the maror to eat it within that amount of time. L'chatchila, when eating both matzah and mar, you have to try to swallow a kazayis at once. You try. In other words, you try your best. In other words, you're chewing, and you're trying not to swallow. And then when you have a bunch chewed together, then you swallow it down. You try your best. That's how you're supposed to do it. Right? Okay, so we spoke the matzah, we discussed the maror. Now we go to the koyach. After maror comes the koyach. Koyach is the sandwich, a sandwich of matzah and maror. The koyach is taken. Anyone remembers from which matzah you take the koyach from? The sandwich, which matzah does it come from? If you have 3 matzahs, from which matzah does it come from? The bottom. We already broke from the top, the middle. Now we break from the bottom. We break a kazayis. Again, we'll discuss later how much is the amount. And now a kazayis from the bottom matzah. And with that piece, you make a sandwich. You take maror, again, in a kebab, horseradish and lettuce. On the lettuce, you dip it into charesis. Over here, you're going to use charesis that's what we call the dry charesis. Not actually dry, but it does not have any wine in it. Now, dry because it has apples, ground apples, so it's not totally dry, but there's no wine in it. That's the charesis you use for the sandwich. It's going to touch the matzah. You dip it into the charesis, you shake it off. In other words, you don't want charesis to be on the maror. Just to begin it, you don't want to take, because if it stays on the maror, it takes away from the taste of the maror. You want to have the taste of the maror, the taste of the matzah, so you shake it off. You make a sandwich, and before you eat it, there's something that you say, King Osahil, the Zman Shavez Nishon, something that you say, and then you eat the sandwich. What is the idea of the sandwich? I don't remember, we didn't discuss it. What's a sandwich? In order to perform the mitzvah of eating maror according to Hillel, it has to be a sandwich. Because the reason why we eat maror is to commemorate the maror that they ate in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, when they would eat in the current Pesach and matzah and maror together. According to Hillel, that meant a sandwich. So they had a sandwich of a piece of the current Pesach, piece of matzah, piece of maror. It's literally a sandwich. We eat maror to commemorate this, that we even ate maror in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. According to Hillel, how did they eat that maror in the times of the Beis Hamikdash? It was a sandwich. It was a piece of the current Pesach, a piece of matzah, a piece of maror, all together. So according to Hillel, to do this mitzvah of eating maror on the night of Pesach, it has to be specifically a sandwich. So the sandwich is not about the sandwich, it's about performing the mitzvah of maror according to Hillel. And before we eat the sandwich, we say Nevadim. So this is what Hillel did for the Beis Hamikdash. He would make a sandwich of a piece of the Pesach sacrifice and a piece of matzah and maror and eat it together. And then we say that, and then we eat it. From the time of matzah until after the sandwich, we are not to speak. We're not allowed to speak. We don't want to interrupt between the bracha and the mitzvah. When you say a bracha, you don't say a bracha and a mitzvah, and then you speak. You say a bracha, and then you don't interrupt between the bracha and the mitzvah, right? Give me an example. On candlelight, you say the bracha afterwards. I mean, any mitzvah that you do, you say the bracha first, and then you do the mitzvah, you don't interrupt in between. So here you say the bracha right after you wash, al achilas matzah, the mitzvah of eating matzah. So you don't interrupt until you finish eating the matzah. When do you finish eating the matzah? The sandwich. That's the last mitzvah before you start the meal, is the sandwich, matzah and maror together. Now you can ask, well, we have to claim it at the end of the meal. You don't want to be so strict to say that you can't talk until that's the claimant. That's whatever calls it an extra stringency. We don't push people to that. It's not encouraged at all. It's too much to be strict not to talk the entire meal until you eat the claimant. But till the sandwich, we are not to speak. If you need to speak and it's relevant to the mitzvah because you don't know what to do, you have a question, then you're allowed to, when you try to avoid it. Sometimes you could motion instead of speaking. After prayer starts. So this we have the Magi, Magi, so we talk about matzah, maror, that's maror. Fire, the sandwich, and it goes children. Right. What's the rest is the meal? Then comes the meal. Now, before we get to the meal, we have to wait. You're not sure the meal yet. Just don't. I'll make some matzah. You have to wait for the meal now. So we have to discuss matzah, maror, and prayer. What we have to discuss? We discussed how much. We said for the matzah, we're going to break off a kazais from the top, a kazais from the middle matzah, and eat it together. How much is a kazais? So we're now discussing if you have your own three matzahs. Now, obviously, we said three matzahs, but I want to emphasize the point in here. Whatever amount I'm going to give you now, how much you break off from the matzahs, that is because we have three matzahs. Person does not have three matzahs and just giving them a piece of matzah, then it's a different amount. So when you're having your own three matzahs, it really depends on the size of the matzah. So we're going to discuss first, let's say there's 8 matzahs per pound. I think the average company, but what's more common, from what I understand, is it's 8 matzahs per pound. The Crown Heights Bakery in Albany, over there it's 7 matzahs per pound. It used to be 6 matzahs per pound. One day I was away teaching here, I passed the bakery, I said, but just double check. And I asked them how many matzahs per pound. It was only 6 matzahs per pound. It's the same thing. Let me just ask them, confirm it. That's actually now 7 matzahs per pound. It will drop thinner. So it's 7 matzahs per pound. But I believe I didn't check all the companies. I know there's one company that it's 11 matzahs per pound. It's very thin. But I think what's common is 8 matzahs per pound. But whatever the case is, I'm going to discuss now 8 matzahs per pound. If it's 8 matzahs per pound, then, and you have, we're discussing when you have 2 matzahs, when you have 3 matzahs, so you're taking from both matzahs, then the amount you're going to take from each matzah is 1/4 of a matzah. 1/4 of a matzah from the top, and 1/4 of a matzah from the broken one. Now, the broken one, depends how you break it, might end up being about 1/3, or whatever it is, depends how you broke it. But whatever the case is, you're going to take 1/4 of the matzah. So that means you don't necessarily need the whole broken piece. Because if you broke the matzah 60-40, So a quarter of a matzah is 25%, right? 25% of a matzah. It depends how you broke it. You don't necessarily take the whole broken piece. You're going to take a quarter of the matzah. Okay, got it? The best is 8 matzahs to pound. If it's, let's say, from the Krautz bakery, roughly you would take from both matzahs, take maybe a fifth of a matzah, about a fifth of a matzah from each matzah. I discuss what if you don't have your own 3 matzahs, we'll just, you know, just if you have, you'll have 3 matzahs. If it's if you're taking from one, if it's just one matzah, maybe giving someone a piece of matzah, then it comes out more. Yeah, if it's because you're taking from 2 matzahs, so it's rabbinic, you don't have to take a double amount. You have to take a little less, the rabbinic amount. There's biblical amount, there's a rabbinic amount. So that's why whatever the amount is, though it's when you're giving someone just a piece of matzah, it's the full amount. When you're breaking off, you're breaking off less than what usually kazayis is. A kazayis, I think they are confused now with this time. Okay, because that according to the when is the obligation according to the Torah, then the kazayis is 50 grams. When it's rabbinic, it's 10 grams. So let's say when you are giving so let me just give without I already showed you in the matzahs, so I'm going to talk the amount. I already told you how much percentage of the matzah. Now let's discuss in grams in terms of biblical versus rabbinic. So you're giving someone a piece of matzah. It's almost like you say that you don't have no three matzahs, you're giving a piece of matzah to do mitzvah eating mitzvah matzah. How much you have to give them? 15 grams. When it comes to the sandwich, matzah mar together, that's rabbinic. Rabbinic, according to Hillel, we have matzah mar together. So how much matzah does the person have to have? 10 grams. So what I was showing you before, that if you have 3 amounts, take whatever amount that is, that's the lesser amount. That's the rabbinic amount of 10 grams. Now, the amount I gave you per matzah, when I took a quarter or a fifth, that's not exactly 10 grams. I made it more because when you eat matzah, not everything goes down your throat. Some gets stuck between your teeth, and some falls on the floor sometimes. So made a little more than that. But but the idea is they should be able to consume 10 grams. That's what the share is based on. Because you're having 2 matzahs, so take the rabbinic amount from each matzah, that will definitely total over 15 grams. So if you're giving someone just a piece of matzah, you only need 15 grams. That's what it boils down to. Yeah? Clear? Good. So whatever amount I gave you from mighty matzah, you break up from the top and from the broken piece. When it comes to the sandwich, that's the same amount you break up from for the sandwich too. You break if it's the crown eggs matzah, you're breaking off from the bottom matzah, you break off about a fifth. If it's the matzahs if it's 8 matzahs to pound, then it's about a quarter. And if there's more matzahs to pound, and 9, 10, then it could be about a third. The idea is, if you do the math, you figure out how many grams in a matzah, and then you want to make sure you're going to get 10 grams of each matzah, but make it more than 10 grams, because you lose some matzah when you get stuck between your teeth, and sometimes it falls on the floor. Okay. So now we finished matzah mar and koinach. So we go now to shofar. We go to the meal now. So the beginning of the meal, at the beginning of the meal, is a custom to eat the egg dipped in salt water. That's like the entree. Egg and salt water. Kids don't like it. Okay. It's just a small piece. You peel the egg, you dip it into salt water, and you take a small piece. It's a minute to add egg and salt water. It commemorates Avelis morning, God forbid. First thing the soul of morning, you bring in eggs. The egg is round, so like the world revolves, that things don't stay the same. This salt water commemorates the tears that the Jews were crying in Mitzrayim. Now, what's the connection with morning? We're mourning the Beis Hamikdash because comes the night of Pesach, and we are reminded that we had the Beis Hamikdash, we had the current Pesach. Now there's no current Pesach. You have the neck of a chicken, a piece, roast the neck of the chicken with barely any flesh on it that commemorates the current Pesach. So we are reminded of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So so there's mourning for the Beis Hamikdash. So we have the egg dipped in salt water. And then goes the rest of the meal. Now, there's something very important about the meal that's different than all the other sukkahs. The nights of Pesach, which is different than the other sukkahs, which is a bit more challenging. Usually, when you come to the meal of Shabbos and Yom Tov, the mitzvah for your meal is to enjoy it. Over here, also mitzvah. So does Yom Tov. You meal, you enjoy the meal, you eat, you drink. But here, there has to be an awareness that you can't eat too much. Regular Shabbos and Yom Tov, there's no awareness. You eat and drink as much as you want. I don't mean to overeat, but to eat, to become, over here, there has to be an awareness. By the end of the meal, there's a very special dessert, the afikomen, the matzah. That's the dessert. And if you eat and you forget, you just forget it, you become oblivious to what's happening. All of a sudden, you eat and you're full. Oh, now it's afikomen. Oh, I can't eat, I can't do it. Then you can't do the mitzvah properly. Because if you don't have an appetite, and even if you push yourself to eat it, you're not performing the mitzvah in the highest level. You want to leave an appetite. I don't mean it to be hungry, but you have to leave some appetite, some interest in eating the matzah. Now, if a person actually, let's say, hypothetically speaking, not usually, but a person, let's say, stuffs himself so much that he mamish feels like, sometimes people stuff, not healthy, but some people do it, they stuff themselves, they mamish feel so stuffed that to eat anything else, it's just disgusting to put anything into the mouth, right? If so, eats up to that point, and then he eats stuff for commitment, he doesn't even do the mitzvah. And there's no mitzvah at all. And that's not common. What's more common is that the person he has no appetite. He doesn't feel like eating it. Okay, I'm gonna push myself. It's great. But you're not performing the mitzvah at the maximum level. So you want to make sure when you eat to be conscious that the afikomen is coming up, and don't eat so much. Eat a little less fish, a little less chicken, everything a little less. So you should have some appetite when it comes to afikomen. Also, you want to make sure to drink a lot. Drink a lot for me, I mean drink a lot. Let's drink and drink. You mean drink enough because after that afikomen, we're not supposed to drink any water. Now, according to halacha, you could drink water after afikomen. Many Chabad is we don't drink water after afikomen. So if you keep many Chabad, you're not going to drink water after afikomen, it could be challenging because after afikomen, right, so the matzah dries up your mouth. Then you're drinking wine, again wine, the third cup, the fourth cup. There's also some alcohol in there, causes a certain dryness, and you feel like drinking. So make sure before the afikomen to drink enough water. Now, the afikomen. How much afikomen do you need? Now, there's always challenges, like from experience. You're supposed to have 2 kazaisim. Well, we spoke about a kazais, you break a kazais, and we said a kazais is about whatever amount they gave you, a quarter of a matzah, a fifth of a matzah, whatever that was. Now, for afikomen, you're supposed to use double that amount. Because one kazais to commemorate the current Pesach. We're eating afikomen to commemorate the current Pesach that was eaten at the end of the meal. One kazayis is to commemorate the matzah that was eaten with the current Pesach. So preferably you should have two kazesim. Now, if a person feels they can't have two, it's too much, two kazesim. One kazay feels the but it's preferred to have two kazesim. That's why you want to make sure you're eating to leave the room. They could do the mitzvah properly. So now, the afikomen is from the broken middle matzah, the larger piece. So if, so how much do you have to have from that? You said you have to have, if you're using the crown oats matzah, we say you have to have a fifth of the matzah. So 2/5 of a matzah is good enough. Now, your 5 pieces that you have to have the payment is the majority of your matzah, because that's the larger piece. Now, you only have to have, if you're using those matzahs from there, you only have to have the payment 2/5 of a matzah. Before we spoke about 1/5 of a matzah, now it's double, it's 2/5. That's less than half a matzah. So you don't even have to have all the 5 pieces. So it's not really so much. It's not a large amount. Any questions? It's clear. Okay. Tomorrow, Mr. Shem, we'll continue. What's up tomorrow? No. Yeah, right. I think every day. You can every day now. So it's another today, Monday. Another 2 classes. Okay. Yes. No. Matzah? The only difference is going to be the amount, because being that it's a thicker matzah, a heavier matzah, so the amount, so you just need a 1/6 of the matzah, whatever. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. Yeah. Yes. The what?
Which month is
The larger piece. You broke the middle matzah in half. One larger than the other. So now you broke it into 5 pieces.
Yeah.
So the payment comes from that. That's the application. Those 5 pieces. But it's a thick matzah, like the crown is matzah. We only need